We have to live the rest of our lives without Sandra. She's in jail. She can still see her little girl grow up. We don't. We don't get to see that.
What punishment do you want? You wanted the death penalty?
Of course.
What kind of punishment?
Prison's too lenient.
Sandra's uncle on Saturday expressing his support for the death penalty against the suspected killer of his 8-year-old niece. We are back taking your calls on this outrageous case of rape and murder of an innocent 8-year-old child, allegedly, and I say allegedly, by a young mother and Sunday school teacher. Now, published reports quote sources as speculating the crime may have occurred inside the church where she taught Sunday school. No official confirmation on that. Phone lines lighting up. Morella, North Carolina, your question or thought, ma'am.
Hi, Jane. I read your book a few years ago, and I wish it could be required reading for everybody in high school. It's great.
Thank you.
I just have a lot of doubts. This woman, it's just almost unheard of for a woman by herself to commit this kind of a crime. And the way this woman inserted herself into the case from the beginning with, oh, that was my suitcase. Oh, then there was a note left in the driveway. Then she goes in, and after 3 hours of interrogation, she's confessed. I mean, I'm assuming they certainly had to videotape her confession. I'm just wondering if she's more fitting the profile of somebody who would be swayed and be suggestible than somebody who could really do this horrible thing. And I'm wanting to know, along with everybody else, when there's going to be some autopsy result.
Oh, excellent. Well, Don Clark, I'd like you to handle all of that with the caveat that you heard that the public information officer refused to confirm that this was a confession.
Yeah, I did hear that, and that police department has done a great job out there, so I understand where they're doing, but they really have their work cut out for them. In line with what this lady is saying, I don't know that I totally agree with what she's saying, but the fact is that they're going to have to go to work and really build a very strong case here, talk to a lot of people, interview a lot of people. There's one other person involved in this too that hopefully they'll be able to, with the right assistance through psychologists and so forth, is their own little girl to see what was going on there. So they've got a lot of work to do to build a case, whether it's death penalty or not, but to ensure justice is done.
Well, I think it's very important to point out to Mariella, who just was mentioning, well, that it seems strange that she confessed, so-called, or that she said it was my suitcase, but this psychologically makes sense. There have been reports of women who are abusers and then murderers who do then tell the truth about it, unlike other cases that we know when they're not psychopathic, as I don't think that this woman is, who would make up a story when she's in shock, when she really is admitting something, and when it happened by impulse as opposed to planning.
Dr.
That's
Judy,
possible.
You're right, and the caller mentioned my book. The title of the book is Secrets Can Be Murder.
Yes.
The whole premise is that toxic secrets sit and build like a volcano, and then they explode.
Exactly.
And then once they explode, there is a release. And I'm not saying that's what happened in this case, but that's what happens when somebody finally releases the secret through the act of committing a crime. There's a sense of relief, even though they're in a you-know-what load of trouble.
Exactly.
Bob Moffat, what are some of the other tidbits emerging here, specifically speculation that it happened in the church, the idea that she went to one of the vigils? There's a lot of creepy details.
Absolutely. She did go to a vigil the second night after Sandra went missing. And then there is the question as to where the murder took place. Did it take place in a church? Obviously, this would strike a chord with any person who has spent a long time going and praying and worshiping at a house of the Lord to know that a little girl was murdered there. Some of the other details that we're not quite sure on, besides where the murder took place, is when the murder took place. Those charges that were filed today, the special circumstances, those include the option that the murder actually could have taken place before the sexual abuse took place. Keep that in mind as well when you're considering this.
Oh my gosh, that brings in a whole other phrase that I don't even want to articulate into the equation. Lorraine, New Jersey, your question or thought?
I have two quick questions. Number one, does Huckabee have a husband? And number two, I wonder if she's ever inappropriately touched any of her Sunday school students, and they're just afraid to speak up.
Well, I've never, I know she's divorced, and she has a 5-year-old daughter, and we've certainly never heard anything about that. I mean, her family says this is completely out of character. They are reeling in shock, and, you have to have compassion for her family. These people, her grandfather is the pastor of the church that's half a block away, the one where this could have occurred. Let's jump ahead, Bradford Cohen, to the preliminary hearing. What are we going to see and hear?
Well, you know, in preliminary hearings, generally there's some evidence that's presented that you can at least formulate the basis for why the police are charging her. At this point, we don't know anything, and the police department is doing an excellent job by kind of keeping that all real close to the vest. They're not actually saying anything because they're saying they want her to get her a fair trial, which is admirable for them. And I think that's what's going to happen up until the point of the preliminary hearing. They're not going to give you a lot of information.
Right, Remy, in fact, both sides have indicated they want a gag order in this case.
Yeah, and that's not surprising. That's because of the attention that this case is going to get. The parties want to make sure that the defendant's going to get the fair trial that she's entitled to. I mean, it already sounds as if the court of public opinion has already convicted her, and we know so very little about this case. But as you bring up, Jane, I think that at the preliminary hearing, we're going to learn a little bit more about the case.
Let's hope, and let's not convict anybody. Nobody's been convicted. They've just been charged. Thank you to my panel for their insights. Octomom brings home the last of her October.